It was a beautiful 4th of July morning in 1960. Vibrant reds, whites, and blues shimmering as the parade marched through Columbus, Ohio. Crowds lined the streets cheering, bands marched by, politicians waved. But the winner of the best float that day was not the local bank. It was a single little girl, just 7 years old, pedaling her bicycle block after block as she bravely smiled and rang her little bell, ding ding. Now the bicycle she rode that day wasn't the average ride of a bike. Brooms sticking up from the front and back held a banner between them that said, "I'm going to clean up the world." Adorned in a lengthy black skirt and white blouse, black smudges dotted her little face, as would be fitting for someone who had been busy cleaning up the world. Who was this little girl, and why was she out there? According to a 1998 People's Magazine article, some might say that sign would become her mission statement, and has since become her life's focus. Her name is Janet Folger, and today we're going to be taking a look at her life, her work, how she's overcome her fears to live a life for God and helped clean up the world in a very unique way. I hope this young woman's story will provide encouragement and a simple reminder to us that when we put our faith into action and rely on Him, all things are possible. It was in the 10th grade that two guest speakers joined Janet's health class one day. A woman from the local abortion facility who, according to Janet's book, True Life, made D&C abortion sound wonderful. The doctor inserts a curette into the cervical cavity and the products of conception are gently scraped from the uterine wall. Sounds easy, right? Then, a pro-lifer challenged us to look at the pictures of the babies in the hefty bags. The results of one day's work. When I saw that, I knew I was staring directly at a perfectly formed child who was never given a choice in the matter. You see, it was on this day that Janet learned the messy truth about abortion. But she soon found herself in a predicament. I really didn't want to speak, yet I felt I should, she confessed in her book. In my mind, I pictured a scale, and I had to decide which was more important. On one side, 1.5 million babies whose lives were going to be taken from them. On the other, the fact that I was too afraid to tell anyone about it. With encouraging words from a pastor, Janet, the only ability you need to serve God is availability. She took the stage as the keynote speaker at the Memorial for the Unborn, an event attended by over 3,000 people. Years later, Janet would discover that a pregnant woman at the rally canceled her abortion appointment the very next day. That child is alive because Janet was able to push beyond her fears to be the messenger. Janet remembers, I never could imagine doing it, but God gives you just what you need when you need it. Newly nicknamed the pro-life girl, Janet joined forces across the country, speaking at national conferences, encouraging others to vote pro-life, lobbying state senators, picketing pro-choice candidates. Her creativity soon made her a shining star in the movement. When pro-choice candidates came to town, her events often landed on the evening news. During one event, she hired sailboats with large pro-life signs to picket an outside campaign rally. On another occasion, a pro-choice candidate wandered into her apartment complex to film. Grabbing neighbors and pro-life signs, they picketed in the background. Needless to say, those ads never ran. But her creativity soared to new heights when she staged a parade, New Orleans style, when Hillary Clinton came to town. Now this was no everyday parade. It was a full-out funeral march, complete with caskets, shady grim reaper, undertaker in full costume, and wailing mourners holding pro-life signs. In the future, Janet would be called upon many times, often for ideas. There were those other anonymous phone calls begging her not to show up to protest events or candidates. Janet credits God with all of her creativity, praying before every event. God's will be done. God's truth be made known to all. But Janet Folger is best known as a heroine in Ohio. By this time, Janet worked for Ohio Right to Life, spending months garnering support from state house representatives to co-sponsor a bill which would outlaw partial birth abortion. However, after a cruel twist of rules, the pro-choice representatives met together and secretly voted to kill the bill. As Janet and the Right to Life team sat pouring their frustrations out to God and despairingly begging Him to show them the way, it dawned on Janet that a nearly unknown special petition might work. In order to save the partial birth abortion ban, Janet would have to get at least 50 of the State House representatives to sign a petition they had never heard of by 9 a.m. the next morning. Janet wrote, "This petition, which had never been done before, was our only hope. But just because something has never been done before doesn't mean it can't be done now." Relying on God's endurance, Janet stayed up all night getting signatures. Whether legislators were in their homes or eating dinner in a restaurant, Janet and her team tracked them down one by one. The 51st signature was signed as the bell rang, calling the morning General Assembly to order. Imagine the surprise when moments later it was announced that the bill had been saved to the pro-choice representatives. Janet recounts a pivotal point leading up to the floor vote. When the speaker recognized Troy LeJames, he said, "I am the youngest of 18, and I am so very glad that my parents didn't shut the door on me." With these words, the speaker brought the bill to a vote, and it passed. The partial birth abortion ban was signed into law on August 16, 1995. 26 other states went on to pass similar legislation. But does Janet take the credit? No. She just keeps pointing upward. Janet says, with God, all things are possible, and He hasn't let her down yet. So, why this issue, you might ask? Why is Janet the pro-life girl? What about housing or healthcare or education? Janet says this: life is a prerequisite to every single one of those issues. Good as housing or healthcare if you're dead. After her success in Ohio, Janet moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to work for Dr. James Kennedy's Center for Reclaiming America, where she spent years hosting her own radio show, writing value center columns, becoming a sought-after speaker, and the author of 7 books. In 2006, peers in the conservative Christian movement encouraged Janet to host a presidential debate. Janet initially hesitated, believing it was a bit of a waste of time, unless the audience, a group of hand-selected evangelical leaders from across America, could select the candidate whom the pro-life community would rally behind as a whole. However, after seeking God for wisdom, she knew that He would provide all of her needs, and she accepted the position. Speaking at an American Vision conference the next weekend, Janet discovered something incredible: a new technology, handheld devices, which would allow every single member of the audience to vote. Janet immediately brought the owner on board, and the following pieces fell into place. On September 17, 2007, the Values Voters presidential debate welcomed 7 presidential candidates on stage, and the questions began. After all the candidates had spoken, the audience voted. Janet prayed that God would raise one candidate head and shoulders above the rest. God answered that prayer with Mike Huckabee, who received 63% of the vote. Janet, once more, doesn't take the credit. She says, make yourself available to God, and you never know what He will do. When she was 7 years old, she wanted to clean up the whole entire world. But over the years, God has made it abundantly clear that Janet Folger Porter's contribution is to help clean up the abortion issue. Will Janet ever quit? I doubt it. Will the heartbeat bill overturn Roe v. Wade? I pray so. And I look forward to seeing Janet rejoicing on the steps of the Capitol when it does. So, what is it about Mrs. Porter that I admire? Is it her creativity? Is it her leadership in the pro-life movement? Is it her faithfulness in the face of the enemy? Yes, but there is more. Remember when Janet brought that man with the audience response technology on board for her presidential debate? Well, that was my father. And when she recruited him, she really recruited my whole family, including me. My family spent the last several years co-laboring with Mrs. Porter at several events, and I have had the opportunity to intern under her multiple times, including the week the heartbeat bill passed the Ohio House. It was such an incredible experience to be able to sit right next to her and witness that landmark bill. And now, as I continue to work under her and learn and grow in my own walk, I see God raising me up to follow in her footsteps. Mrs. Porter's courage has set an example for me to follow, as she constantly reminds me to put my faith into action and to rely on him through all things. And one day, I hope to be an inspiration for others. So, what cleanup crew will God ask me to be a part of? I don't know. But I doubt we'll still be fighting to protect life. No doubt that battle will already have been won. For Mrs. Porter constantly reminds me of her favorite verse, the one she quotes when all the doors are shut and the naysayers are nearby. With God, all things are possible.